Let's pick that up with Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus, former IDF spokesperson, senior fellow at the think tank Foundation for Defence of Democracies. Thank you very much for being with us. How long do you think this is going to last?
Hello, thanks for having me on. I think it'll take quite a while. Eventually it'll boil down to how well can Israeli, sorry that's an alarm sounding, how well can Israeli and American planes suppress Iranian missile fire? And on the other side, how well will the Iranians be able to fire missiles? That's the main indicative. Another thing that will be influencing how long it will take is whether Iranian proxies in the region, Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthis in Yemen, will decide to join in the battle. If they join, that will extend events. But currently, it looks as if the weeks and months of planning and the joint coordination between the US and Israel and the intel that they acted on was accurate. And hopefully we'll get confirmation in the coming hours and maybe more than that, that the so-called supreme leader of Iran was actually eliminated, Khamenei himself. We know that various other figures...
He is the target, is he?
He was indeed very much so the target, but we also know that there is almost final confirmation that indeed the Iranian commander of the IRGC, General Pakpour, was eliminated, as well as the defense minister and senior advisors to Khamenei himself. Still not 100% confirmed, but I think the initial assessments are very positive. That also will determine how long this will take.
I should just ask you, since your alarm's gone off, are you safe to continue to talk to us?
I am, thank you.
Okay, all right. In terms of the strategy, though, are the Israeli government working on the same strategy as the United States? Because the Iranian foreign minister has said today that if the military strikes were to stop, he'd be prepared to come back to the table to discuss the nuclear program. And Donald Trump, in the past few weeks, has suggested that he would prefer a diplomatic solution.
Yeah, you know, I wouldn't hang too much substance to anything said by Iranian officials. They will say anything if they think that they can get them out of trouble. They've been using diplomacy as a way of, tool of deception for ages, for centuries, just to get themselves out of trouble. They say that they will negotiate, but then they only negotiate and don't make the necessary concessions. That is how we found ourselves in the situation we are in terms of the Iranians continuing to say that they will talk, but then not really actually relinquishing their plan to build nuclear weapons, not stopping to fund terror organizations in the region, and continuing to build ballistic missiles, all of which are conditions that the US and Israel and some braver European countries have said we are not going to tolerate. That is how Iran found itself in the situation that it is now. So I wouldn't be too impressed with them saying that they're willing to negotiate. If the supreme leader or anybody of higher stature in Iran says we are willing to disassemble the nuclear weapons program, we're willing to agree to no enrichment on Iranian soil, we will stop supporting Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis and others, that would be room for serious concern for diplomacy.
How concerned will you be about the air defences in the region? Because main story tonight is the attack in Dubai on the Palm Jumeirah. It would seem that in Bahrain, in Kuwait, in the United Arab Emirates, they don't have an Iron Dome system. They're not able to defend themselves from drones and ballistic missiles. They're much more exposed than Israel.
Yes, well, each country, places money as a representation of their values. We spend on life-saving systems because we value the lives of our civilians and we know that we are threatened. And it's not the Iron Dome, it is the Arrow and other systems. Iron Dome is only for small-range rockets. But to the point, Israeli civilians, all about 10 million of them, have been in shelters all day. And we have been hearing the sounds of explosions of dozens of Iranian missiles that have been fired at Israel. I think the fact that the Iranian regime is firing at regional countries, Arab states in the region, is much more a sign of their panic and perhaps surprised at the results of what Israel and the US were able to do than anything else. Maybe they're hoping that this will apply pressure on the US to relent in the attacks on the Iranian regime. Not entirely sure that this will be a smart strategy from an Iranian perspective, and it may even cause the countries that have the capacity to do so, like the Emirates and Saudi Arabia, to actually defend themselves, their airspace, their sovereignty, and perhaps even strike back and retaliate against Iran. So that's an option that exists, and not sure that the Iranians were wise in escalating the conflict so broadly, so early on in the game.
Well, we'll continue to watch that reaction. Jonathan Conricus, always good to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Let's go